This is a podcast or something like that. Hello and welcome to the 50th episode of Verbal Journal. I can barely hide my delight and my disgust and my delight because this is the 50th episode of the Verbal Journal podcast. Now, I'm going to record it. I took it upon myself to sit down and record the 50th episode. I said, you know what? No one else is going to fucking do this. No one else does this any week. I was going to say every week, any week. No one else ever does this. It's always me. People seem to think this podcast just makes itself. I make this podcast. I sit down and say, hey, it's Friday at 10 a.m. Sit the fuck down and make this fucking podcast. Yeah, you've been up for less than 20 minutes. Yeah, you've been cogent and coherent and conscious for less than 20 minutes. Make a cup of coffee and do the 50th. Fuck. I don't even know what I was trying to say there. I think I was just trying to say 50th episode, but it sounded like I was trying to say 50th ass episode. Which I wouldn't mean in a bad way. I would mean that in a good way. Okay, we're gonna flip it all around. I know we've done the reverse episode. Don't get start with me. Oh, we've already done the reverse episode. I'm not doing the reverse episode. That was reversed. What I am gonna do is flip it around. Go to the. We're gonna start with the last segments and end with the first segments. We didn't do that on the reversed episode. I don't think. I think I just spoke in reverse. So we're gonna start with the mailbag. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of messages wishing us a happy 50th. Okay. A lot of messages. So I just wanted to start with this so we could kind of get it out of the way, move on to the other thing. So let's start with the mailbag. Happy 50th. Okay. This doesn't say happy 50th. It says security alert. Okay, let's open it up. A new sign-in on Windows. We noticed a new sign-in to your Google account on a Windows device. If this was you don't need to do anything. See, this is the thing. You know, people will write to me in this sort of like coded language, and it's almost like I have a lot of viewers who are like kind of Gen Z and stuff like that. So people will kind of come up with these different jokes. So this is what's called ironic humor. This is what's called based. This is when people say, "Oh, that's based." This is what they're talking about. This is a sort of ironic. So got that out of the way. Happy 50th VJP. Things are going good. I've had a nice week. I've dealt with a slight medical thing, actually. I sort of got something in my eye like a month and a half ago, and I like didn't really feel it there. So I was like, I don't think that really went in my eye. But then on and off, it's come and gone. So eventually this week, I was like, I actually have to see an eye doctor. So they looked in my eye. They didn't see anything. So I think my eye's just kind of healing from maybe getting something in it like a month and a half ago. That's sort of my working theory because I don't usually imagine getting something in my eye. So the odds of imagining getting something in my eye and also having an eye issue at the same time would be pretty slim. But regardless, it was really good to go see a doctor. It's always good to get a professional opinion. So I'm feeling a lot better with that. And work's been good. I had some good appointments with clients this week, and I didn't see friends that much. I saw friends on Wednesday. I had a great night with friends on Wednesday. That's enough for a whole week. It was so delightful. People, it was sort of like an open mic. People playing some songs. Lots of good friends. Some people I see regularly. Some I hadn't seen in a while. Just such a great way to get together with people and hang out. So someone did test positive for COVID after that, but I don't think I got it. So that's good. And then this weekend, I honestly have been mostly keeping to myself. I've been doing my own thing. I've been painting and chilling. Tonight I'm going to watch some football. There's been some chess on. I've been, doing a lot of art. I got to be honest. I do spend a lot of my time doing art. There's been a little progress with writing and maybe not like video stuff, but like stuff that could turn into videos. Last week I mentioned watching Shrinking, the show. I think I had only watched 2 episodes, right? I think I had only watched 2. I did decide to watch the rest of it, and I have lots of mixed feelings. It was definitely good compared to other shows, but it was not good compared to like Better Call Saul, or Breaking Bad, I guess. But Better Call Saul is like my high water mark for like shows that seem really good. And Shrinking it had plenty of good ideas, plenty of good writing, plenty of good acting, very funny. It made me cry numerous times, but it was sort of in cheap ways, like a sitcom will do. But regardless, I don't think Better Call Saul made me cry very much. There must have been a time or two in the end, but not that that's the way you judge a show. Shrinking at the end of the day did not have the honesty that Better Call Saul feels like it has in how it portrays people, and how it sort of like wants to be real with us about things and consequences of actions. So Shrinking was very much a little like, it was a comedy. It was a comedy, but it was trying to be a drama a lot, so it was kind of incoherent a little bit. I took notes on it. I would say there's a vague chance I make a video about it. If I can figure a way to frame it, I don't want to just do I'm a therapist who watched Shrinking. I'm trying to see if there's another connection I can make with it, but I'm also not really sure that that's actually going to turn into a video, because I generally have a lot of negative things to say about the show and don't particularly feel like making a video about that. But yeah, and I've also been just like working on some writing about art and some other stuff related to that. Not sure if any of that'll turn into a video, but things are good. Even just the fact that I'm watching shows is good if you're a fan of this channel, because that's sort of like, and I guess I still have Apple TV. If I don't cancel it today, I could watch like Severance or something. People said I would like that. I don't know. There's got to be a good show for me to watch next. I should like give it a really hard thought, a really hard thinking. But anyway, so that's that. And okay, so if we're going backwards through the podcast, I should do the screen time report next, right? All right, so that would be right over here. Got my screen time report. Okay, so again, I've been watching a lot of things on my phone, or like listening to the NEAS improv compilation, NES podcast improv compilation I've mentioned before, putting together. Listening to that on my phone, listening to a video on my phone while I watch something on my TV, because I'll be watching it on my TV by plugging in my laptop. Not the one I'm recording on now, but my old laptop with the HDMI cable, because I use my old laptop because I'll watch sports on websites I'm not sure about. And then I'll plug that through the HDMI into my TV. I wouldn't want to use this nice laptop with some of those websites. And so that will occupy that device. And so I'll be using my phone to watch a video or listen to a video more accurately. So I used my phone 56 minutes more than last week. And last week was already a ton because I was doing the same thing. The daily average screen time for me on my phone this past week was 3.5 hours. But I want to be clear, I'm not actually staring at my phone for 3.5 hours. For example, 10 hours on Sunday a week ago. That was because I was painting all day and listening to things on my phone. So YouTube, yeah, is 20 hours in the past week. But that's just because I swear I'm not looking at it the whole time. So it's still not great, I guess, but it's not bad. So cool. That was really interesting. Next up, we are going to talk about the chess segment. So the chess segment is interesting because right now it is the last day of a major chess tournament, the Tata Steel Masters, and the Tata Steel Challengers, the lower section. But the Masters is where it's at, and it was like a 5-way tie for first place going into today. So very exciting last day. I think Gukesh is one of the people tied for first, and he seems to be winning. against Magsadulu, who I believe was another. No, Magsadulu was not tied for first. So Gukesh is going to win. Anish Giri won. He was tied for first. Abdusaturov, I think he was tied for first too, and he's winning. So there could be a tiebreak. Wow. How do they do the tiebreak at Tata? Pragananda Faruja looks like a draw. And, okay. I'm a little sad with Ding Liren, the world chess champion, being in this tournament, first one in a long time, not doing well. He didn't do that well, but, I mean, I wouldn't criticize him because, it's a major tournament, and So he got 6 out of 13. He lost 3 games. He won 2 games. He drew the rest. It's not good for the world champion, but give him some time. I did love his playing. I still find him a very interesting player, so rooting for you, Ding. Had some more interactions on Twitter with people who don't really understand my cause about getting Magnus to change his social media to stop saying he's the world chess champion. I commented... I responded to like some sort of like Chess24, which is a chess website, some tweet by them. And I said he should update, he should stop calling himself the world chess champion. Someone said, he is a world chess champion though, not a current one. And I responded, look at how Kasparov does it in his bio. This is very simple. Another person responded, he is the current world rapid and blitz champion. And I responded, cool, then maybe he should put that in his bio instead. Neither person liked or reacted to my response. Because I'm correct. Okay, so that's the chess segment. Wow, 50 episodes. It's pretty cool. You gotta be honest. 50 episodes. That's pretty fucking cool. This was such a casual idea, and I'm like, I'll just do it. Okay. So here we are. So going backwards, we talk about sports. Today there's a lot of football on. It's Sunday day football. I found this article, Fantasy Football Cheating Scandal Leads to Site Firing Employee. So that's interesting. A fantasy football website has fired an employee for being involved in a cheating scandal during an NFL playoffs tournament with a 6-figure first prize. They used internal controls to make advantagegeous changes to a contestant's roster after games had kicked off, including swapping in a player who had already scored a touchdown. Wow. That's so... How do you not think you're going to get caught for that? That is so... Like, that... Come on, you got to know there's a record of all that. Okay, that's enough for that article. Next up in sports is an article from artnet.com. The Van Gogh Museum fires 4 staff members over Pokemon chaos. So Pokemon is one of my favorite sports. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam has fired 4 workers over the chaos surrounding last year's collaborative exhibition with the Pokemon Company. The news was first reported by the Dutch newspaper Het Parool, which confirmed that the employees would not be returning to their jobs after being suspended in December. According to the museum, those fired included operational services employees who had worked as security guards or in the check room or ticket office. ArtNet News has reached out to the blah, blah, blah. Of the fired workers, one had stolen a box of limited edition Pikachu with gray felt hat cards modeled on Van Gogh's 1887 self-portrait but featuring the beloved Pikachu character. How do you not steal that? Another staffer who had worked for the museum for 25 years allegedly told visitors exactly when they could best nab the cards, a breach of the museum's procedures and codes of conduct. So a fucking visitor went and told on them? Give me a break. What would Van Gogh want? What would Pikachu want? It's a beautiful collaboration because both Van Gogh and Pikachu struggled with mental health issues. So it's kind of powerful to like have them work together. The gift shop devolved into chaos the opening day. A mob was recorded storming the cash register and videos posted online, and the entire merchandise collection sold out in 24 hours. Tickets to the show, now closed, were also sold out weeks in advance. The museum stopped offering the card in October due to unmanageable crowds, and after flippers began reselling the collectibles online for massive profits. Wow. Over $100,000 for a card. The cards are due for a relaunch in February. But like, What do you do if you buy one of these cards, but then they just print 1,000 of them? I mean, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't even say who the artist was. These were from 1960, Naoyo Kimura. That's surprisingly old, 1960, but that's kind of cool. I mean, they look cool. Pikachu in a felt hat. I don't know if they're that cool that I would trample someone for it. But I think that says a lot about society. Okay. Oh, fuck. I can't do the next part backwards because I specifically write down things to talk about, and sometimes they lead into each other in a nice way, sort of accidentally. So we're going to undo the backwards motif. And we're going to continue on forwards during this, through this 50th episode. I guess the first cool thing I wanted to talk about is that this channel, my YouTube channel, because I have a YouTube channel, is getting so many views still. Like it's crazy that the views have picked up in the last month. Like, it's just I don't like, yeah, it's really unbelievably cool. Like I'm still getting like 9,000 views a day on my channel, like 10,000 views a day on my channel, and like most of that is the Breaking Bad video. Like, it's just crazy. The Breaking Bad video right now, it's 10 a.m. In the last hour, the Breaking Bad video got 277 views. Like, that's just fucking incredible. I really am blown away by the success. Like, the fact that I'm getting like 50 subscribers a day or more still. Like, yeah, yesterday I mean, seriously, I got 80 subscribers yesterday. Like, this is just fucking insane. I'm so I'm so blown away. It's so cool that that I have found a way to really like capture people's attention, and that I've actually achieved success in my expressive arts, to be able to tell a story. And I've gotten some really nice comments the last few days. You know, there are always people leaving weird comments every now and then, but, you know, the good comments always make up for it so much. And I mean, people are really nice. One person commented that they were watching it on mushrooms and they were like really tripped out by the visuals, which I don't know why you would watch my video on mushrooms, but hey, it's probably better than some other YouTube videos on mushrooms. But yeah, people, being really nice and just, yeah, saying great video, good video, you look like Andrew Garfield, you know, just a lot of really nice comments. So yeah, that means a lot. So 45,000 subscribers I also hit. 45,000 subscribers. That's really, really cool. So very cool. I'll do another YouTube live stream at 50,000 for sure. Okay. Already talked about shrinking. Whoops, jumped the gun on that. So I'm reading artist biographies, of course. I've been talking a lot about artist biographies. Artist biographies are in the news. So I finished the biography about Man Ray the photographer, Man Ray the painter. Man Ray, he would be so mad if he heard me say Man Ray the photographer before Man Ray the painter. That was like a theme his whole life. He literally was a groundbreaking photographer who pioneered methods of photography. If he didn't invent them, he like developed them in unique ways. The rayograph he basically invented, along with other people parallel inventing it. He would take photos without a camera through his like methods of exposing photographic paper in specific ways. And his eye was incredible. He really understood lenses. He understood light in really deep ways. But he wanted to be a painter. He didn't consider photography a serious art or even an art. And I don't agree with him on that. But, you know, it was just his own sort of journey. He also was from the U.S., but he lived in Paris almost his whole life. He hated coming back to the U.S. And I'd say he was kind of selfish at the end of the day. I mean, not as bad as probably Cy Twombly. Well, it's hard to compare different people's selfishness because the context of their selfishness would be so different. But it's when you look at Man Ray, like he didn't come home for like his mom's funeral or his dad's funeral. He would always tell his family members that he was gonna come home, not do it. His siblings. He kind of just like made people subservient to his life's mission. He had all these quotes that were all about how an artist needs to be selfish and how he is just living his life. And I don't really, I guess if that attitude was good, it doesn't feel good anymore. It's really interesting to me to read these surrealist sort of like mentalities, because I definitely relate to it as something in my past where I was like, I am an individual. Not that I'm the only one that matters, but like, I'm just going to think about myself first. And that's going to, be, I'm creating my identity, and I'm someone new and different. And like, for me, it's been a big part of maturity to like kind of not feel attached to that identity much and just be like, well, who am I actually? I don't need to be like, I don't need to necessarily create myself. I want to also discover who I am as much as I'm creating who I am. I understand people wanting to create who they are also. It's not, that alone is not what I mean. It's a way of doing that kind of like prioritizes self-discovery and self-invention over like other people's needs and connections with other people. There's like a sort of surrealist, like I'm in my own world type of thing that I feel that I've grown out of to a significant extent. So when I read like artists, who I have maybe a lot in common aesthetically with or other things, but they sort of really fully have bought into that mentality, I wonder, is it just because it's from 100 years ago? Is it because of differences in personalities, upbringing, or stuff like that? But, I read all these artist biographies because to me, it's sort of a really interesting challenge, because making art is kind of selfish in a sense. But like, I mean, just in the sense that you're doing something that you enjoy that like doesn't necessarily directly bring anyone else pleasure, and it could take up a ton of time. But that's not a bad thing. We're on this planet. We didn't choose to be born. Like, I think we have the right to spend our time how we want. And that does always have to be balanced with other people's rights and needs. And so it's sort of like this eternal challenge. How do you do something somewhat inherently selfish in as non-selfish a way as possible? Man Ray didn't struggle with that. He just went for the selfish side. And as someone who critiques the use of the word pretentious, I don't throw it around a lot, but I do think Man Ray was kind of pretentious. I think saying photography is not an art. I don't know. I just, I know that people want recognition. I know they want to be listened to, but I wonder if they can just maybe make sort of less broad sweeping generalizations with that attention, because it comes off very pretentious to say things like photography is not an art. And there were other examples of pretentiousness I can't really remember, but it was just interesting because people call me pretentious, and I'm always someone who's like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you saying? How am I being pretentious? I'm just saying something I'm interested in or something. So yeah, I don't have good examples off the top of my head. Maybe they'll come back to me, but more about this in a sec. So not about pretentiousness specifically, but regarding like selfishness, another famous surrealist, Salvador Dali, obviously. I've never read a biography of him, and I think I was mentioning that last week. I really look forward to, because I've only read his autobiography, which is obviously different. And Man Ray wrote an autobiography too, but it's very like non-linear and very like not focused on biographical information. I never read it. I would read something like that if I was super passionate about an artist, but the interest in biography is not an interest in strictly how artists want to represent their life. It's a blend of how they represent their life mixed with how their life actually was. And that's what's interesting, is that tension there. But anyways, I've read Salvador Dali's novel, also his fiction novel called Hidden Faces. And what's interesting, I'm going to spoil it here, so go forward a minute or two in the podcast if you want to read his novel without knowing the ending. The very, very much the literal last image is the main character, who really feels like he's modeled after Dali. He's not an artist, but he's like this like dandy, aristocratic guy who seems like maybe how Dali imagines himself without the art. Whatever. He's not just an insert for Dali. He's a French count or lord at the outbreak of World War II. And He goes through this whole plot, and he betrays certain people and just is out for himself the whole time, and kind of misanthropic, but definitely just not like an altruistic person, just out for himself mostly, and also having just interesting experiences. But the book ends with him crying, I think, and then being perceived by his servant, and like sort of his servant being like, wow, you're going to pity yourself after all these years of being selfish. And I forget if the servant says that or if the protagonist imagines the servant saying that. I think the servant says it. So Dali chooses to end his book drawing out and pointing out how stupid the self-pity of the sort of like self-absorbed character is. A character to be completely self-absorbed, and then when things don't go his way or there's obvious consequences of all his actions, he's all self-pitying. And I thought, obviously these people are self-aware, even if they're selfish or behave in ways I don't like. They are self-aware, which is part of how they draw you in. But, like, that just, I don't know. I guess it's interesting to me how the surrealists gave in to their self-love, and I, can critique it, because I think there are healthy ways to love yourself without, causing negative consequences for other people excessively. There's also what I learned a little bit from reading a little bit more about the surrealists is like, there's a few of them, especially like Andre Breton, the guy who like led the movement for many, many years, from the death of the guy who coined the term surrealism, Guillaume Apollinaire. I'm sorry, I don't speak French. To for like 4 decades, Andre Breton was like the leader of the movement, more than 4 decades, at least in name, the leader of the surrealist movement. He really branded it. He branded him to it, and he branded it, and that's probably the reason that surrealism is not a super useful term anymore, is because how much has one person loaded their own assumptions into that thing. But one interesting thing is like, so he worked in World War I as like a field medic in the psychiatric field. He was very young, but he was like interning or working in that field, and he saw people with shell shock, which would later be called PTSD. And he had experience with mental illness, and he was interested in Freud's theories, which were fairly new at the time. For Freud's writing just a few decades old or something, maybe less actually. And so he was very interested, but he sort of had this, and I don't know all the ins and outs, like the thing I read didn't give like a full history of this, but it described Andre Breton as being like interested in Freud's theories about the unconscious, but not interested in using them as methods of healing people, not interested in the actual like psychiatric, medical, mental health approach to the unconscious, just interested in mining the unconscious for like metaphysical and sort of like profound meaning or whatever, but like not really interested as much in like healing, and even thinking that people with mental illness shouldn't be healed. Now, there's obviously an argument for like, not all divergences should be corrected, of course, like, and people should not just be made to conform to society, and some mental illness maybe like is, I don't know, it sort of depends on what you mean by mental illness, but like some mental illness might not be possible to be healed, and some can be healed. Like there's differences in different types, but I don't know why you wouldn't try to heal unless your methods of healing are very poorly developed, as they certainly were 100 years ago. But I don't really know how he saw people with PTSD and thought that mental illness shouldn't be healed. I honestly don't get that. I mean, if I was going to have that sort of like thought about things, it would be more likely for people with like thought disorders. And I don't want you to take this too seriously, but like if there were any people that I would be like, oh, I can understand how like this is part of their world and their worldview, and we shouldn't try to rip this away from them. I don't know whether it would be someone who like is hyper vigilant because they experienced like traumatic stress. I would feel like it would be someone who has a completely conceptually different way of viewing the world, in a way that just seems inherent to how they think or something like that. But even that, you have to be careful because people can shift, people can change. But I don't know. And some people with PTSD, it's true. Like you know, you don't like you can have someone with PTSD with like different ways of thinking or seeing their symptoms. Maybe they don't want to see them as symptoms. Maybe they want to see them as manifestations of some sort of sense of like spiritual trauma or something like that, you know, or they're healing on a spiritual level, and they don't want to think about it as their brain healing. They want to think about it as, you know, getting more at peace with the other side or something like that. And that's valid. But that's not saying I don't want to heal someone's mental illness or help someone heal their mental illness. That's saying, you know, there are aspects of the healing process that I should respect where they're coming from if I want this healing process to go well. But all in all, I just, you know, that's part of why, as I talked about last week with the Freud-Dali meeting, like that's part of why Freud kept his distance from the surrealists, is because, well, they were weird little freaks for the first part, but also he was like, they don't even want to like, I'm a doctor, you know what I mean? Like Freud was a doctor. He had his issues, but he was trying to like heal people. You know, he was trying to help people heal. So he's like, I can't associate with a group that thinks mental illness is good. Like, I don't know how Andre Breton thought that. Like, I don't know how. It's so obvious that some people with mental illness are really struggling and suffering. Like that kind of general thing. Oh, we should just let people. That's so like, I don't even know how you think that if you meet enough people who are struggling with mental illness. Like there's, you know, some people, their symptoms are syntonic. And they sort of work with their life. They don't create huge problems. Sort of by definition, if we're calling it a mental illness, often that's not the case. But most people have dystonic symptoms that cause problems in their life. Like, I don't know how you wouldn't notice that. On with the same sort of like theme, I saw a reference of a quote from a George Gross autobiography, and he was another surrealist. I haven't looked much into his stuff, but he's interesting. And this quote, he said in his autobiography, "Nothing was holy to us. Our movement was neither mystical, communistic, nor anarchistic. All of these movements had some sort of program, but ours was completely nihilistic. We spat on everything, including ourselves. Our symbol was nothingness, a vacuum, a void." So that was kind of interesting. First of all, surrealism was tied to communism a lot of the time, but not always. It also was tied to mysticism a lot of the time, but not always. Also tied to anarchism a lot of the time, but not always. But yeah, I guess that's the whole point. Nothing's holy to them. You know, these, you know, yeah. The problem, or the interesting thing I wanted to point out about this is the mention of nihilism. Nihilism is actually a theme in Hidden Faces, the novel by Dali that I was just talking about. It comes up very explicitly. There's an image that ends one of the parts, the chapters or parts, where a character has the word nihil, Nihil, the Latin root for nothing. Those words literally appear on a character's eyes. It's like a surreal thing. Like the book has like a character sort of like go into a, almost like just like start zoning out, and then the narrator or whatever describes the word nothing being on their eyes. So nihilism is definitely a theme for Dali and for surrealists in general, and as George Gross says here. But I just think it's funny to be like, oh, nothing was holy to us. We didn't, you know, go by any of these ideologies, just nihilism. It's like, that's an ideology, dude. I mean, I'd consider nihilism an ideology. Write into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com and let me know whether you think nihilism is an ideology. So lastly, on the artist biography agenda and our general agenda is, so I mentioned I was going to read my next biography is about a total monster named Balthus, who's a painter who, by all evidence, is a abuser and a terrible person who's never tried to take accountability for any of his wrongdoing or admitted to it in any way. And just like an absolute monster and a disgusting, horrific human being. I was really worried about what the biography was going to be like, but right from the beginning, it got completely to the point of challenging this guy's narrative of his life and his art and asking tough questions, whether directly to him or to the audience. I'm like 80 pages in. It's to the point where Balthus, like, because the author actually gets to meet with Balthus at his like palatial like manor in Switzerland. Like the artist is filthy rich. Pretends to be like a feudal lord or something. But Haven't gotten all the details on that, but yeah, the artist just like lies to the author, not realizing that the author knows what's going on. So it's just kind of interesting. It's fascinating reading it and having the artist, this 84-year-old guy with like a 48-year-old wife, like lie to the author, and then the author like talking to the readers and explaining the truth and explaining this hidden history. It's really amazing journalism, honestly. One other thing I wanted to mention about Balthus that's interesting is the author and Balthus are looking through all these reproductions, all these photographs of Balthus's shitty art, because Balthus didn't hold on to any of it. He has like 2 of his oils, and they're not the ones that display graphic abuse of children, or they're not like the ones that are typical of his work. So, and they're like small and meaningless, basically. That is very interesting and strange for an artist to not hold on to their work. I've now read a bunch of biographies. That is unusual. That is very unusual. I mean, Man Ray held on to so much of his work. Like Duchamp, like either wanted to hold on to it or made sure that like it was all in one place, or people he knew were holding on to it. Balthus didn't want, like, he seems to not want it, and it's probably because on some level he knows that it's really shitty art that doesn't matter and is meaningless. But also having it around him, like, yeah, he probably doesn't want to look at that disgusting material that he's created either. Yeah, he probably doesn't. Or how is he going to have guests over and they look at his painting? Like, you can't. He does this whole thing where he's like, my paintings are not erotic. Yeah, I paint little children in poses that you're saying are erotic and seductive, but that's just all in your head. You're the creepy one, not me. And it's like, dude, look at your fucking paintings. There's literally children in vulnerable positions with their undergarments exposed. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You did this for years. Like, you think we're gonna believe that this is just some weird study in like the human form, dude? You're a fucking creep, and your old history and your letters kind of expose it too, even though you try to hide it. So anyways, even Balthus doesn't want his paintings around him. It's really remarkable. And lastly, there's another point about Narcissus. One of Balthus's early, artistic things when he was like 17 or something was to copy I don't know how you say it, Poussin, the French painter, famous 16th, 17th century French painter. Copy a painting called like Echo et Narcissus or something. It's like, it's about the Narcissus myth. And those of you that have watched the channel for a while might remember me live streaming talking about Dali, and I even had a reproduction, or have it somewhere still, of the Metamorphosis of Narcissus, of Dali's own rendition on the Narcissus myth. And it's, a good painting, but for Dali, I always took away from that painting that it seems to be saying, like, don't be a narcissist. I always took that away from that myth. He turns to stone when he's looking at his own image. To me, that's pretty clear cut. Don't be a narcissist. You'll turn to stone. You'll miss out on the world because you'll be too focused on yourself. So this guy Balthus, as a kid, like a young artist, went to the Louvre and would paint this painting, do a reproduction of it. Looks kind of shitty, honestly, but whatever. That's part of how artists get their education. And yeah, and Balthus was and is certainly a narcissist, or at least completely absorbed in his own world and unable to understand other people's world. And to be clear, when I'm using the word narcissism here, if someone's diagnosed with narcissism, they're in the process of like trying to heal from this like struggle of like looking at the world in this way. It's not the same as someone who just has untreated like narcissism that they're not willing to even acknowledge or view as a problem. So yeah, I wouldn't want to sort of confuse the two. On the one hand, like if I have clients who are like, I'm worried I'm narcissistic, and I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. If you are narcissistic, like, we'll work on those tendencies, and we'll make sure that, it doesn't control your life. It doesn't get in the way. That's, people who you would say like, oh, that person's narcissistic, are people who are not actually trying to work on those patterns. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting the way like self-love kind of comes up with artists and how it can be pathological in the narcissistic way. Sort of like the flip side of it being motivational and positive and healthy, which it can be as well. But I am very happy that the book is extremely well written, extremely incisive, and very, I like reading about monsters and fucked up people, and as long as it's well written and puts everything in perspective. You don't want things to be missed. Balthus is a weirdo. He pretends he's not Jewish. Like, his mom was Jewish. And if you don't want to be Jewish, like, you could be like, no, I'm not Jewish anymore. You know what I mean? But he pretends that he never was Jewish, and he made up this whole story to the author that his mom's last name is the same as his dad's friend's last name. And so anyone writing about Balthus's biography has mistakenly thought that his mom was Jewish because his dad's friend with the same last name was Jewish. But this is just bullshit. This is literally bullshit. He made it up. He also contradicted himself several times when telling the author this. And then after the author made it clear he's Jewish, Balthus just would say these anti-Semitic things. He'd call someone a horrid little Jew and stuff. And he would get pleasure from saying anti-Semitic things in front of the author, who he knew was Jewish. And Balthus is Jewish too, but he won't admit that. It's just kind of a fascinating study in human behavior. Like, the author's writing, like, I can tell he's getting pleasure from saying these anti-Semitic things in front of me now. Like, it's just remarkable. Like, the writing is so good. It's so interesting to read. So, hey, I guess we're getting to the tail end here of the 50th episode. It's a new year. It's 2024. We got a lot of plans for the Verbal Journal podcast. If you want, I might start doing solo improv on the podcast. So write in a suggestion that could work for solo improv. Write it into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com. Like someone, you could think of something that would work for a solo improv scene. And that's going to be one thing we add to the agenda. And thank you so much for listening. Actually, I don't know why I'm thanking you. You obviously enjoyed it if you listened this long. So you should be thanking me, frankly. So you're welcome. Have a great rest of your day. And I should be doing one next week. Actually, next week, it might be a night cast. So we will see about that. Guess there's a slight chance I don't do it next week and I just wait, but probably I'll do a nightcast. All right. Bye. Yeah. All right, let's try that again. Goodbye. This is a podcast or something like that.